All right, looks like we're live. And I am here without my regular sidekick. He's got some sort of day job obligations going on and sadly might for a couple weeks, but lucky him. I don't even have a day job right now. And I'm here with Common Filth joining me today. How you doing?
What was the alternative title you gave this stream?
Grime
or
Ordinary Grime. I wanted to see if anybody caught on to it. All right. So I got a couple topics that we're going to get into, and then maybe we'll take callers. I don't know. But first, I got to do a little house cleaning. I talked about this Monday, but I realized, only about half as many people listen to the weekday streams. So I'll just quickly go over it, and then we'll move on because I don't want to harp on it. Last week at the end of my stream, I had John Steele on as a caller, and Steele decided to pull a regular stunt he tends to pull where he just wanted to come in and blatantly disrespect my guest. He wanted to blatantly disrespect me. And I was having a particularly pissy night, and I had enough of it and told him he's not coming on again until he apologizes and amends his behavior. And, I don't like doing that kind of crap. I don't like having the band hammer out, or I'm not spoony or any shit like that. But, when it needs done, it needs done. And, I hope he does amend his behavior and pull his head out of his ass. That's not how you treat somebody when you're a guest on a show. That's not how you treat a friend. You keep that kind of behavior up, you're going to find yourself a very lonely man. But, I mean, Steele's not a bad guy by any stretch. I can't have him doing that on here anymore. Enough was enough. And in all fairness, I was already pissed off when he came on. Everyone thinks I was mad at Black James, and no, that wasn't the case. Look, Black James, I actually really enjoyed that conversation with him. He does tend to monopolize time, and I've just learned I got to take a firmer hand with him as a caller when he does, but it's no big deal. I like having him on. I like the conversation we were having, and under his faggy Rob Liefeld fanboyism, I actually thought he had a point, which is why I was letting him go on a bit. No, actually, I was really pissed off about my audio issues I was having all night. And Steele came in and decided to pull his usual bullshit at a really bad time, and I just had enough of it. But yeah, that's the quick house cleaning. I talked about that a little bit Monday when I did a stream. I'm just real quick getting that out of the way here. And we're not going to harp on it past that because no, I don't want to be petty about it or anything like that. I don't like that it had to come to that. But enough was enough. You can't be coming in here and shitting up the stream all the time. I demoted him from guest to caller over the last few months, hoping he'd get the hint there, and it didn't work. But yeah, I hope he pulls his head out of his ass. All right, so moving along, because like I said, I don't want to harp on that crap. First topic I want to talk about is a fun little story about good old Shoe on Head, everyone's favorite little, I don't know, Gamergate thought or whatever the hell you want to call her.
Blow up doll.
Yeah. So I wrote a little guest post on Davis Arini's blog, staresattheworld.com, where I basically made the same argument I made on here a few weeks ago that little meetup Shoe on Head had with Lindsay Ellis. I thought it was disgusting. I thought, it just shows that nobody there really believes anything. You know what I mean? It's all just, none of it meant anything. It was just a game. It's all just about pay me Patreon dollar dues and shit with them. And so I wrote a blog post saying just that. And put it on Davis's blog because I figured that'd be, he's the guy I know with a blog right now. Well, Shoe on Head read it, kind of, and got all pissy about it and tweeted out like, Davis Arini said all these mean things about me on my blog. Seriously, sweetie, you need to brush up on your reading comprehension skills, because the first sentence of the first paragraph is like, hey, folks, Bechtloff here. I'm doing a guest post for Davis. But apparently she can't be bothered to read an article she wants to bitch about, because I'm not entirely sure she really can read beyond a 5th grade level. But yeah, I called her like a blow-up dog. Oh, that's the other thing she said that made me laugh. Like, she said, nothing he says about me is accurate. Okay, so I didn't actually really state many facts about shoe-on-head in this. I stated the fact that she is, dating Armored Skeptic, and the fact that she was at this meetup. Those are the facts I stated. Everything else was my opinion, unless she's autistic enough to think I was actually accusing her of being a blow-up doll that acquired sentience. Nothing he said is accurate. It's like Shoe-on-Head is a parrot that was just taught to speak as a parlor trick. Like, she doesn't know what any of the words coming out of her mouth actually mean. Like, this is inaccurate. Oh, yeah, Shoe, you're not actually literally a blow-up doll. You just might as well be.
Well, she sure showed you.
Yeah, oh, man. Surprised she didn't cut herself to show there wasn't air leaking out. Like,
no, the first time I heard you say that a couple weeks ago, I think you were calling her a blow-up doll. I thought to myself, I need to add this to my everyday vernacular because it's so dead on perfect.
Yeah, the only thing I said in there that, like, and I even said I could, like, I had heard that she apologized to Lindsay on her Twitter. And I said in the article, I heard from someone that she apologized to Lindsay on her Twitter. I can't confirm that because that would involve having to go through her Twitter, and life is too short. Like, so, I mean, if that's what she's talking about being inaccurate, it's accurate that I heard that. I mean, I didn't say it actually happened. But no, she got all, and it's funny, like, I didn't even like retweet it directly. I just took a screen cap because I genuinely don't like interacting with the skeptic community. Like, I really don't. But I just screen capped it, and I'm like, reading comprehension skills, sweetie. I don't know what to tell you.
My favorite thing about that, somebody said about that meetup, it was a Spiky Buddy. I don't know who Spiky Buddy is, but they said a pedophile, a something awful goon, a gender fluid tranny, and a baby killer walk into a cheesecake factory. Add blow up doll to that list.
I mean, like, part of the article is saying, like, well, in the one picture, like, Dan Olson's got his arms crossed and he's all mad about it. And in that moment, God in heaven help me, I actually kind of identified with and respected Dan Olson a little bit. At least I know he actually believes in something.
It's hard to believe in things because then you might get scrutinized.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the entire argument of the shoe-on-heads of the world. Haha, you believe in things. Both sides are dumb. Everyone's dumb but me.
It's because they're raised on South Park. South Park is I think that show is responsible for more IQ points lost than anything in the last 20 years.
I just got so frustrated with South Park this past year when they supposedly were going after SJWs, and it was so pussyfooting around, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so epic what they're doing," and then, they're like, this past year, that was the end of South Park for me. I'm just like, I couldn't believe how they pussyfooted around, and everyone wanted to treat it like this was some hard-hitting shit they were doing.
So it's like an animated shoe-on-head blog with a budget.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong; it's still by leaps and bounds the best thing on Comedy Central, but only in the same way that catching herpes would be better than catching AIDS. I mean, I'd rather watch South Park than whatever the fuck Daily Show clone is on right now.
And go figure that we'd be nostalgic for Jon Stewart, that he'd be the lesser of the evils.
Yeah, really.
Because ever since he left, everybody's been trying to fill that void, and it's terrible.
Ugh. It's a Family Guy bit and I can't even remember what it was, but it was making fun of like trends in TV, and at the end the announcer, like it's a commercial for a TV show, just goes, "TV, that thing you used to watch."
I mean, if you're not into like live sports or anything, if you're not into live sports, you really don't have much of a reason to keep your cable subscription.
Oh, I'm seriously considering getting rid of mine because, like, I was thinking about, there's a handful of shows I like. I like Flash and Arrow because I'm a superhero dork. I like Rick and Morty, but I was thinking, like, I could watch those online. Like, I can go to CW's website and watch those shows like the day after they air. Am I really paying this big cable bill to watch these 3 shows a day early? So yeah, I'm probably going to get rid of my cable here soon too. I kind of renewed it a few months ago, and it's one of those things where, like, there's a big cancellation fee that gets less and less each month. So once it gets down to a certain level, I'm probably just going to cut it down to just internet. Because I mean, there's 300 channels and not a goddamn thing on.
You would think after decades of work in the content mine that they'd find something good, but and that was always a joke on TV shows back in the 90s, like, oh, 150 channels, nothing's on. We thought, that won't happen, but then it happened. As if writers in the writer rooms all across Hollywood are perfectly aware of what's going on.
I can't. I mean, I'm hard pressed to even like think of shows that are on. That's just. I kind of thought like that. There's that Tim Allen show that was on that kind of got canceled for probably political reasons.
Yeah, you want to know why it got canceled?
Why? Everyone says because he was a conservative. I mean,
no, Tim Allen made like the PC thought police. They compared it to he compared it to Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
And then several weeks later, his show got canceled, even though it did well for its time slot and had been doing well.
It was something like it was the #1 comedy I think ABC had. And it was something like the 3rd biggest show on network TV or something, which is saying something because, I mean, it's.
And not only that, I think they aired it on Friday nights, which is typically a very low ratings area for the networks.
Yeah, they kind of tried to kill it. So there are other networks supposedly looking to pick it up, but yeah, it was basically just canceled out of spite. And I mean, again, it shows they don't want to make money. They don't want to,
I think they did the same thing with Community when Joel McHale made fun of Obama at the correspondence dinner. They were expected to renew the show, but then they axed it right after that.
That wouldn't surprise me. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Tim Allen ripped over Nazi Germany remark. So he's compared it. He compared being a conservative in Hollywood to living in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. The Anne Frank Center got all mad about it, and now he doesn't have a TV show.
Well, it's funny how they proved him right too, because he's literally. I remember that clip where he's on there. He's like, "Man, you got to watch what you say out here, or they'll throw you out." And sure enough.
I remember back when Norm Macdonald used to do the Weekend Update. He made a similar joke.
Oh, I miss Norm Macdonald so much. Did you ever see that clip where he was on The View and he like Bush had just gotten elected, and he was all like, "Yeah, I think this will be a big step up from the last guy because the last guy there was all that lying and whoremongering and murder." And they try to shut him down, and he's just like, "What? The president's a murderer. I thought that was probably."
I think he did that because he has like a thing against Barbara Walters, because everybody says, "Oh, Barbara Walters did so much for journalism," but he hates her because she started this whole celebrity cult worship thing.
I know he likes to troll celebrities. Like there was one of the Comedy Central roasts back when they were worth watching, where he was one of the guests and he just refused to he just ignored everybody and was reading the paper. And somebody finally called him on it. He said, I wanted to see something funny, so I was reading Marmaduke.
Remember the thing that you're talking about? It was the roast of Bob Saget. And these Comedy Central roasts, they just have filthy, dirty jokes just for the sake of being filthy and dirty. And what he did, he was reading these very clean cut jokes from like this kid's joke book, and it was great. It was fantastic.
I used to really love those roasts because, I mean, even if I didn't care about who they were roasting, like everybody brought their A game to those things. And but I heard last year they were either going to, or maybe they did, were supposed to do an Amy Schumer roast. And I remember thinking, like, that's going to be a disaster because that woman can't take a joke to save her soul. Like, I can't imagine that goes more than 5 minutes. And maybe that's why it never happened. I don't know. Maybe they tried to film it and it didn't pan out.
Oh man.
Cynic in Chief. Hopping in on what's going on? Okay, his mic's muted. I guess he's figuring out his audio. All right. Well, another topic I wanted to get to. While Cynic there is sorting out his audio, I saw Spider-Man: Homecoming yesterday. Now, okay, so there's one major problem with this movie, and it's the fucking diversity casting. There's a half-black chick who's playing Liz, which is a lot of these characters aren't even the actual characters from the book. They just sort of like they might have a similar first name, but they're not even meant to be that character. But she's playing this character Liz that Peter is lusting after in high school. She's the popular girl, and she's a good-looking girl, and she's a decently likable character. And again, I'm going to say spoilers out the ass here. There is a plot twist involving her coming up. That casting I didn't mind. The bully Flash Thompson, instead of being the square-jawed all-American jock boy, is this scrawny, dorky-ass fucking red dot Indian guy. And he's not believable as a bully at all because he's dorkier than Peter, but he's not even as good of a student. It doesn't work. There's this, I don't even know what the fuck she is. I'm going to call her Mystery Meat. There's this Mystery Meat girl playing quote-unquote MJ, who's not even Mary Jane Watson. It's some other character named MJ. Never mind my love of redheads and my being upset when you downgrade from a redhead. Never mind the diversity casting. This character is fucking cancer, all right? She's this obnoxious, thinks she's better than everybody, liberal twat. Like, they go to D.C. on a field trip, and she's like, I don't want to see these monuments that are built by slaves. It's like, shut the fuck up, bitch, okay? Look, everything was built by slaves for 99.99% of human history, okay? Just be glad you live in that 0.1% time. But no, her character is just the fucking worst. And, okay, that doesn't work at all. There's this, like, fat Filipino kid that's, like, Peter's best friend that's a new character. That actually really works. I like this character a lot. He's a perfect kind of comic relief off Peter. It works fine. But the Burger King Kids Club type casting of the high school kids, that's the only problem with this movie. Everything else about it is fucking fantastic. Take that aside, and you have the best Spider-Man movie by a wide margin. Michael Keaton plays the Vulture, and how the Vulture becomes the Vulture is this. We flash back early in the movie to his construction company is doing the salvaging and repairing after the big battle in the Avengers movie, right? And in comes the government, and they just take everything from him. You know what I mean? They just take over the job. He had invested all this money in it, right? And, I mean, his company's just going to go down the shitter now because he had gone all in on this big job. And, you know, none of the government people care. They're like, fuck you, whatever, suck a dick. And when he's back at, you know, his company headquarters, they noticed they had got some of the alien stuff. They had already brought some of it back. And the guy's like, should we turn this in? And Michael Keaton's like, you know, Adrian Toomes, the guy's name. He's like, no, I don't think we should. And basically he becomes this kind of low-level gun runner where what him and his boys do is every time there's a big superhero battle, he picks up a little bit of the scraps, just enough that the governments and all wouldn't miss it, and creates weapons and sells them on the black market with him. Like, one of the weapons he had built was from one of the Ultron drone's arms and stuff like that. And he is an incredibly likable villain. He is the classic doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. You know, he's tired of getting screwed over by the big guys. He just wants to do right by his family and the people working for him and all that stuff. He is perfect in that movie. A lot of people complain that the Marvel Cinematic movies don't have good villains, and while I think that's a touch overblown, there is a lot of truth to it. This movie is definitely the exception. He's one of the best villains in all of the Marvel movies. The interactions between Peter and Tony Stark are really great. There's quite the coming of age story. I mean, like, Peter had been given a very high-tech Spider-Man suit in the Captain America film by Tony. And now, in all fairness, Stark really should have been training Parker. He shouldn't have just, like, he locked a bunch of the suit's functions behind what he called the training wheels program, which Peter hacks and gets into. That said, though, I mean, Spider-Man is quite the douche. I mean, he's a teenager with this power. You know, he thinks he's got things more under control than he does. Again, the overall dynamic between Stark and Peter Parker is just fantastic. There was just the perfect amount of comic relief in this movie. Like, there's a bunch of like school like films the student have to watch, and it's all like little PSAs that Captain America is doing. Like, there's one where like they're in gym and they're like, yeah, it's like the president's fitness test, only it's Captain America's fitness test. And like when the gym teacher turns it off, like referencing the last Captain America movie, he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that guy's a war criminal now, but whatever, I'm supposed to show you this. It's really good. And the diversity hires in the casting can be quite annoying, but a couple of them do work. Like I said, the half black chick named Liz really works. And then there's a big plot twist. Peter finally gets to he asks Liz to the big dance and they're going to go. He goes to her house, and who should open the door but fucking Michael Keaton? That's her father. She's her white father, which, her being mixed race, really, you didn't see that coming. It further made it less obvious, but it's in the ride to the dance that Keaton's character, because Peter already knows what's up with Toombs, but it's in the ride to the dance that Toombs basically figures out that Peter is Spider-Man. Like, he recognizes the voice, and then, you know, she mentions like, oh, he interns at Stark Labs and stuff like that, and so there's really good back and forth between the two of them. It really works. It's a fantastic superhero movie. Yeah, I really, really liked it. There is the obvious flaw, and I really regret the fact that I'm sure a sequel is going to focus more on this horrifying fucking MJ character, because never mind the fucking obnoxious PC casting, but God, she's annoying. Like I hope in this movie series the Green Goblin fucking Gwen Stacy's her, because I can't wait to see her fucking gone out of these movies.
Well, Bechtloff, I'm going to have to cut you off right now because I feel my T levels dropping, my balls are getting smaller, and my man boobs are getting bigger, and so I don't know how to handle this anymore.
Is this Craig? Is that Craig Langley I'm hearing?
Hello.
Hey, where are you hanging out with Cynic and Chief?
He's in my part of the woods today. We just were hanging out. We hung out last night. We thought we'd interrupt, try to get the T levels up a little bit. You know,
I know that's going to become the meme. Like, I'm trying not to let that happen because I don't want to just keep taking pot shots at likely drunken outburst, but apparently it's going to be the meme. But no, really good movie. It's one of Marvel's best, and Keaton's villain is superb. Yeah, I highly recommend it. The one really big flaw aside, it really, really works. It certainly works better than those fucking Amazing Spider-Man movies. I would say this is the best Spider-Man movie, although I still do really love the first two Sam Raimi movies.
We were talking about before we went live how we enjoyed the third one. Even I enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
I even like the third one. It's definitely flawed. Don't get me wrong, but it's nowhere near as bad as everyone says it is. In fact, if you tweak just a few things about that movie, you'd have a really good movie. But
I liked emo Peter Parker. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I don't know why everyone harped on that. To be honest, like he was supposed to be like that, and that was part of the plot thread. You know, he was
because in 2007, hating emo was like the cool thing to do. So that's what it was.
It's like he was acting weird. Yeah, he also had an alien parasite in him. I mean,
well, you have to be pretty emo to get your ass kicked by that 70s show's Skinny Neighbor Next Door, Skinny Neighbor Boy.
You know, the one thing that
Topher Grace.
The one thing that kind of drove me nuts in like the Venom Spider-Man battle, and this was just a problem with the Sam Raimi films, is inevitably Spider-Man's mask comes off and the symbiote like moves away from Topher Grace's face because they just had it in their heads at the time that like you had to see the actors' faces or you wouldn't know what they were thinking or you wouldn't know what they were feeling. Like they just had it in their head that there's no way you could possibly get their emotion out from behind a mask. I'm like, I don't know, maybe they could act.
Well, yeah, just look at the new what the fuck was it? Look at the new Dredd. You know, Carl Urban, the character in the comics, never takes his helmet off, and in the Stallone one, which I like in a cheesy sort of way, he has his helmet on for only like 15 minutes in the whole movie in the beginning. The rest he's helmetless. And Carl Urban does a much better job conveying the character with his helmet on the whole time.
Well, yeah. Well, you have to remember that 10, 20 years ago when these movies were made, there was much less faith in these kind of comic book movies. So there was constantly ways where they felt they needed to pull away from the source material. And where, I mean, now comic book movies are all Hollywood can make any money off of. But you know, they were constantly pulling away from the source material. We gotta, you know, they didn't have faith in it basically, and that shows through. I mean, that's why, you know, the X-Men movies, they're all wearing just black leather. You know, they were embarrassed to have actual anything remotely visually interesting in their costumes.
Well, to give Tim Burton credit, though, in the first Batman never takes his mask off. He only takes it off at the end of Returns to show Catwoman. So actually, Tim Burton had more faith than most Hollywood filmmakers in his character and his creation.
Yeah, I really like the first Tim Burton Batman. Returns is rough, but that's just because Tim Burton needed to be put on a leash. I mean,
it is the most expensive student art film of all time.
Yeah, Returns is just this really weird fetish film that Tim Burton made that Batman shows up in.
T levels are dropping even lower.
Yep.
Tim Burton. Oh no.
The Bechtloff. Oh, no. The Bechtloff's audio presentation is audio soy.
No, but these characters
are. Title for you.
These characters are important because me and Cynic were just talking about this. We are talking now, but right before we decided to prank you with me coming on as him. We were talking to we're in my local area. And we're talking to a guy in my cigar shop. He's our age, and he just saw the new Superman, so he just gave us all the spoilers before you did, Bechtloff. And he was so passionate. He's talking about the DC universe and all this other stuff, and so. This is one thing the right gets wrong. We constantly bitch about, oh, this is so childish. Oh my God, comic books and superhero. But they really are like he was so passionate, and so we need our own characters. We need our own art because we have to think about this. Back in the day, Achilles was the Greek Superman. You know, Beowulf was the Anglo-Saxon Batman. You know, these heroes are important.
Well, I can't remember which philosopher said off the top of my head, but the saying of, you know, you go ahead and write the laws and I'll write the songs and we'll see which the people follow.
Exactly.
yeah, the right, oh, we have to be adult and we can't be all this entertainment stuff. And that's kind of a big reason why you kept losing, why you lost the culture so bad. I mean,
yes, Roland. Yes, go.
and you know what? There is something about the superhero genre that is kind of inherently right wing. There was even an article on one of these shitlib sites where they were complaining about just that, where they said something like some asinine bullshit like Wonder Woman is the reason Trump won or some bullshit like that.
What?
Like some retarded asinine shit. But basically, even one of the shitlibs picked up on, there's something kind of inherently right wing and anti-egalitarian about superheroes.
Oh yeah, it
is inherently about a very, very special person and what they do with, their inherent gifts or whatever.
Well, Jonathan Bowden talked, the great English, orator Jonathan Bowden, who died 5 or 6 years ago. He made this point: there's something intrinsically fascistic about superheroes. These are guys who, minus Judge Dredd, obviously, but even him to an extent, these are guys that take the law into their own hands. They acknowledge the system is corrupt; it's not working, so they have to do what's right, despite what the laws and the government says.
And there was also a thing in there where she talked about like they impose their morality on people and stuff like that. And their morality is always so black and white in superhero comics. I'm like, well, first of all, it's not. There's plenty of stories where, you look at various gray areas. But yeah, I guess they do impose their morality. I guess if Spider-Man's swinging around and he sees a bunch of dindus robbing a store, he doesn't have to take a philosophy class to know what he needs to do.
Yeah, exactly. You want to get on this, Cynic? You got enough? No, he's good. He's enjoying the conversation.
But
I'm a couple minutes behind.
Oh.
So the other thing I saw just last night, I watched it and I think there was only 4 episodes. They kind of blurred together. But there wasn't a lot of it. But Netflix just put out a animated Castlevania show, which is fantastic so far. Really gory, really horror driven. It's very good. I love the hell out of it.
The video games were awesome back in the day.
Yeah, Castlevania games were really good for a very long time, and it's a very cool property. And I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more games get good treatment like that. So many of these companies are so gun shy to do any of that because they just remember back in the 80s when a lot of bad superhero games or cartoons or movies or whatever got made. But you have to remember, nobody making those shows or movies at the time grew up with the stuff. You know what I mean? There are people in Hollywood now that they grew up with these things and they know what made them special, and they would understand them and they'd be able to adapt them properly.
I still contend that Raul Julian Street Fighter gave one of the finest performances in the history.
Well, yeah, that was a great performance. I mean, it's a terrible movie, but every scene with him in it is fantastic.
and Silent Hill, of course, that's actually very underrated as a horror film.
Yeah, I kind of like that movie.
I actually would have cut the Sean Bean parts out and just kept it claustrophobic right there. I'm ranting, excuse me.
There's I like the Tomb Raider movies. I thought they were okay.
Mm-hmm.
I like the first 2 Resident Evil movies. I mean, they're not great, but they're okay. And the first Resident Evil movie was probably the best zombie movie we had at that point in like over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that I go back to is the Mortal Kombat one.
That's a really good movie.
Than a sort of tongue-in-cheek, not taking itself too seriously, kind of like an 80s action movie. There's a good one-liners in it, but yeah, I think that one worked precisely because it didn't take itself too seriously. It knew what it was.
Yeah, and that's actually what I think really works about the Marvel Universe movies, is that there's just the right amount of humor in them. They have fun with the absurdity of what's going on around them without ever just turning into a farce,
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, people think you need to constantly wink and nod at your audience, saying this is supposed to be funny and ironic. It's like, don't insult my intelligence. You don't need to be like, oh, it's a hobo with the shotgun. That's another one that's I haven't seen it, but the premise of it's like, oh, look how absurd it is. It's a hobo with the shotgun. Ha ha, get it?
Yeah.
Look how goofy and silly we are.
Yeah.
Well, Razorfist nailed in his review of Escape from L.A. And you have these action movies that now he's right, post Tarantino, everybody has to have an in reference. The filmmaker has to be winking. Like Escape from LA is a perfect example of a movie that knows it's cheesy. It's not going to make it there, but just having a good time. That's why I love old Van Damme movies. They are cheesy as fuck, but he's not saying, haha, see what I'm doing here? Haha.
Right. It's all played off very sincerely.
Yes.
Yeah, like in the Marvel movies, that when you have moments of humor, it's just somebody kind of stepping back for a moment and being like, man, this shit's really weird, isn't it? You know, like that's it. Like it's not like, you know, winking and nodding at the camera all the fucking time. It's none of that. It's just every once in a while somebody will step back and be like, man, this is really wild shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like how somebody would react to it as if it were
exactly
actually happening.
You know, it's almost like they were trying to write characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hollywood's just in such a slump right now. It's a shame. I miss, you know, I miss going to the movies, but there's just nothing. There's very little worse seeing.
Culture is just in a dead zone.
It is. It's
it's only a matter of time before we figure out if it's permanent.
Oh, I hope not. Well, I don't think anything's permanent. I don't know about the movie industry. It's fucking dying. I mean, I was a film student. I used to go in the mid 2000s. I was in film school. I used to not only just watch movies there. I used to go to the movies 3 times a week. And now I've maybe gone to the movies 3 times in the past year. I mean, there's just everything's re-cliched, and I've said this before. This is liberalism is just repeating itself, like that stupid Ariana Grande concert. Like the leftists don't know how to do politics unless they're recreating the '60s, with everything being a new Woodstock or everything being a new civil rights march, and they've just fucking recycling everything in Hollywood and culture. Like you said, Commonwealth cultures, music, everything. They're just this is like the fumes of the society we've had since post World War II, if I could say that.
And I think a disappearing middle class is also to blame for it, because this is something that, like you mentioned, Razorfist, this is something he's talked about before, where like the middle market for video games, it's pretty much gone now. And if it is there, it's on Steam or on some independent developer's website. It's still there, but it doesn't have the budget or focus it once did. And I think a function of that is because of a disappearing middle class.
Yeah, and I think the same's true for movies and for even perhaps TV. I mean, people wonder, why are there no new IPs? Well, middle market stuff is where new IPs come from.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, like with video games, you know? I mean, nobody's going to pump millions and millions of dollars into a new IP. I mean, occasionally it happens, but it's usually the most cliched piece of shit because it's got to be really, really safe to justify all that money. You know, you end up with like the Order 1888 or whatever, or 1480, whatever. Yeah, the Order 1488. The Order 1488 or something. But no, you end up with that kind of crap. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the hell that movie or that game was called.
And once upon a time, you might have had a couple of million set aside to, you know, actually put your development team, deploy them to do something, to actually experiment with something, try something new. And if it worked out, great, you have a new AAA IP, but now you don't. It's like I go to Walmart, they're still selling new copies of Skyrim. There are no more new SKUs. there's no new pushing out the old onto the clearance bins.
Yeah. Well, what's the meme I saw where it was like the guy behind that company where it's like, please, I already bought 7 copies of Skyrim. It's like, buy one more.
Yeah, it's in the music industry too. I was listening to, this is a couple of years ago, I was listening to an interview with Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails. Now, I'm not a big Nine Inch Nails fan. I'll just say the bat. But he had a good point where he said, back in the day, the music industry would develop an artist. Like, okay, your first album, you're going to build up your fan base and your image and what you are in music over the first couple albums, and we'll help you get big that way. Now, if you're not like a million albums in the first week, you're done in the music industry. And the same thing with, like you said, there's nobody in Hollywood wants to take risk on a new franchise or a different idea today.
It's because the margins, the profit margins are just, they're getting thinner and thinner. And that's why
Right.
you see fewer chances being taken.
Right. I actually got a lot of trouble for this in film school. This is a little nerdy, but I actually think the Paramount decision now, in film history, what the Paramount decision was just after World War II, the studios not only owned the how to make movies, they owned the distribution and exhibition. So they owned the movie studios that made the movies. They owned the shippers, the trucking companies that would ship the movies to theaters, distribute the movies, and they'd own the theaters themselves. And what that did was they created the reason you have so many different movies in the classical area of Hollywood is because studios made so much money off, because of that monopoly. They made so much money off movies like Gone with the Wind or The Wizard of Oz, those big blockbuster type movies, all their World War II movies, they could afford to make the little projects like a star wanting to do a little character drama, like say Jimmy Cagney wanted to do a little character drama. Today, especially since Star Wars, now I'm not blaming Star Wars and Jaws since the 70s, the studios just has to make their money off that's established blockbuster genres because they don't have the money, like you said, the profit margins, they don't have the profit margins to take the risk on all the things.
Well, you look at video games, you look at the insane amounts of money that get poured into these things, and, you know, it reaches a point where now that game has to sell basically all the copies. You know what I mean? It's just every third person in this country needs to have a copy of this game or for it to break even. And they wonder why, oh, gee, this isn't sustainable. It turns out.
Right, and that's also why you have season passes and downloadable content that really should have been a part of the game in the first place. So what they're doing, because new games have been $60 for a long time now. I remember when they were 50, but they've been 60 for a long time now. And in order for them to really release something to retail that's complete, you buy the disc, everything's on it, they would have to sell that game for $100 to make any money off of it. And that's why they add all of this DLC and these season passes.
Personally, I'd rather them do that. I mean, you know, games used to be way more expensive. People forget, like in the Super Nintendo Genesis era, a game was $70, and $70 basically was easily $100 now.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather them do that. That's just kind of, I don't want to feel like you're nickel and diming me to hell and back. You know what I mean? Just sell me the game. Right. Here's the money. Give me the thing. That should be the end of it.
Well, I don't know if you remember a period of time where Sega released their ESPN NFL 2K5 game for $20 new retail, and that was a complete game. So there was a time where they were actually trying to drive down the prices for these big budget titles, and I don't know what happened. I guess it was just an experiment that didn't work out.
Yeah, and then, you know, part of the other way they'll cut costs is, I mean, just how shoddy this shit is that they sell you. I mean, you know, an N64 you could drop a big old television on and it laughed at it. You know, whereas if I just grimace at my Xbox, it'll commit suicide. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing in movies, because take an average movie now, it takes like 200 million to produce, to make it. Then you've got another 100 million in advertising, 150 million advertising. So you got a $400 million movie. So then you have to make a huge profits, but then the studio doesn't get all that 400 million. You have stars like Tom Cruise that demand like 20% of all profits after a certain amount the studio's concerned. So these big budget blockbuster movies, I know the movie industry better than the video game industry. They have to make Guardians of the Galaxy money or it's a fucking flop. Like, take example, the famous example is Gone in 60 Seconds, Nicolas Cage movie. That movie was a huge blockbuster. It made so much money, but it made no profit because of that, because of the advertising, because of the budget, because of Nicolas Cage's cut. all this other stuff. So
think about Waterworld back in the day. Everyone calls Waterworld
yeah.
a flop, and that movie made, you know, truckloads of money. Everybody went to go see that movie. That movie was number one at the box office for like a month.
I saw it in the movie theater. Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I kind of like that movie. Everyone's like, "Oh, it wasn't worth what it cost to make." Well, I'm like, it was worth the $7 it cost me to see it. So,
I actually rewatched it. It's not as bad as people remember.
Yeah, it's not that bad. But the point is, it made a lot of money. It just didn't make enough money.
Exactly.
Yeah, like Gone in 60 Seconds, because I just pulled up the box office information on it. Budget 90 million, box office 237 million. So you figure it's between times and a half and 2 times the production budget. That's what the marketing budget will be. So if it's like 90 million, you add at most 90 million on top of that. And then you also have to factor in your domestic box office.
Right.
The American box office, the theaters take between 50 and 60%.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually even less in China and other foreign markets. So yeah, you have to make like $400-500 million off of a movie like this in order to start making any money.
Well, the other thing we have to think about, nobody ever talks about this in the movie industry. I didn't even learn about this in film school. It's something that should be right away. I was recently reading a book. I did it last fall, not recently, a book on George Lucas's career. Now, the studios actually, like Warner Brothers, they actually don't put money up front for a movie. What they do is they go to the big banks in New York, like Goldman Sachs and all them, and they ask for a loan. They cover the loan, the cost, the cover for the bank, get a loan from the bank to cover the movie. And so then you have to add the interest of those big banks to cover for me. That's taking more out. That's why so many movies are able to be tax written off when they fail.
And you also have producers. I mean, if you think about what is the producer's job? A producer is somebody who, you know, Craig comes to me with an idea here, so I give him a bunch of money and say, go make that happen, and then make me more money. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of it all, my name is splashed right on the top of it.
I mean, that's why Mel Gibson made so much shitload of money with The Passion of the Christ. Nobody studio wanted to touch it, so he made it himself for $30 fucking million. So he went around to the churches. He spread it by that. So he had free advertising paid out of his pocket. He didn't have the studio interest. He didn't have any of that bullshit. So he, like, holy fuck, he made like almost $1 billion off that movie because he cut all that stuff that cost so much other for movies.
Well, remember back in the day when Tiny Toons and Animaniacs were Steven Spielberg Presents? Because he just helped fund those shows. He had nothing to do with those shows beyond that. but his name was plastered right at the top of both of those.
That's right.
Yeah, because you're going to them and saying, can we do this for this amount of money? And he says yes, or he says no. He says yes, his name's on it.
Yeah, the guy who writes the check tends to make the rules.
Well, and now even like, because back in the 90s and leading up to now, it was more of a producer's medium. Film was. Now it's more of a marketer's medium.
Exactly. I mean, that's why you have, especially now with China, China is the untapped box office. Everybody wants to get into China. So they're marketing things toward China because that's the rising audience for movies because their middle class is growing. I don't know how strong the Chinese economy is going to last. I heard it's pretty fucking paper tiger, but that's what everyone wants to get into. And there's a lot of Chinese money flowing in. And so there, there's more of that. There's more or less money for the studios right there because these Chinese companies need to get some in.
I was just looking at what Avengers 3 is going to run Marvel Studios, and like there's a bunch. All the Infinity Gem subplots are going to come together in this movie. It's actually going to be 2 parts. And the movie is going to have the Avengers in it, plus the Guardians of the Galaxy, the guy playing Doctor Strange, and the kid playing Spider-Man. So the what do they call it? The actors' payroll or whatever alone is making this one of the most expensive movies ever made before they start filming.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. I forgot about that too. The actors alone. Another thing, all these actors are insured in case something happens on the set where they get injured. And so that's more money out of the studios they have to pay. So if say Tom Cruise makes a stunt in Mission Impossible 70,000, whatever it is, he falls off the building. One of his stunts, the studios have to pay the insurance money for that.
You know, something that's a pet peeve of mine that probably brings up the insurance on a lot of these is when an actress is signed up for a TV show or a movie series and she gets pregnant.
Oh no!
That I know for a fact that caused problems. I don't know to what extent in the shooting of of Avengers 2. I've seen many TV shows get pushed off the rails because of that. I mean, look, it's wonderful if you want to start a family or something, but when you sign on for something, I mean, this is a huge project with millions and millions of dollars on the line that a lot of people have their livelihoods attached to. You know, I mean, you can't exactly be showing up pregnant for the same reason Chris Evans can't show up to Captain America 4 with a beer gut. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't work that way.
Bechtloff, speaking of that, I'm sorry, I'll let you go, Carmenfeld, after this little anecdote. As if you learn in classical Hollywood, there were some big name actresses like Judy Garland, Lana Turner, I believe Rita Hayworth was one too. Actresses who got pregnant in the middle of a shooting, and the studio contract had them have an abortion just to avoid that holdup you just mentioned, Bechtloff.
Well, I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but I mean. Yeah, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just using a little anecdote, which you mentioned.
I mean, we've kind of gone to the opposite extreme where we're like, I mean, look, getting pregnant is a pretty easy thing to avoid. You know, last I checked, they sell condoms at the store. So maybe, just maybe, there should be a financial penalty or something involved there. Like, hey, you know, you kind of fucked everybody up here. You know, yeah, it's wonderful you want to start a family and all, and I'm not suggesting we go to the opposite extreme, but also, you know, when you're signed on for a project like that, there's a lot of people at stake. I mean, never mind even the fans enjoying it that, you know, have their shit ruined. You know, that's petty and small, but there's a lot of people with a lot of money at stake here. So
yeah, and it's not like these productions are just some slapdash thing where it's going to air in first run syndications, got a very limited budget, so you can't just like, oh, we'll just film you from the chest up. You can't do that. You can't take that shortcut with these productions that have millions and millions and millions of dollars that where their budgets outstrip the GDP of some African nations.
Yeah.
And it's just all this paperwork and all of these insurance agreements, all these contracts. This is why Hollywood is dying, because they have to do everything by the book, or else they're going to get lawsuits up the ass.
Well, you know, good old Shia LaBeouf, who's been busy playing tag with 4chan the last year or so. One of the reasons he is no longer employable in Hollywood is he was such a reckless fucking douche that he kept messing up. Like, they were going to give him the Indiana Jones franchise. You understand that? They were going to do Son of Indiana Jones. Whether that was a good idea or not, put aside. Point is, they were going to do it. And they put the kibosh on that because he, like, if you've ever seen Transformers 2, there's like a scene where they go through some like warp portal to the other end of the world or something, and he somehow burns his hand on the warp portal for some reason. The reason that was written in there is because this dumbass had shown up to the set with a broken hand because of a motorcycle accident. You know what I mean? And like, it got to the point where no one could rely on him to actually finish these huge projects he'd get involved in. I mean, people forget he was hot shit for a while there. You know,
I think he just got. I saw a thing on Drudge either today or yesterday that he just got arrested.
Yes, for drunk driving. Yes.
You know, but yeah, he completely destroyed his career because he just was uninsurable. That's what killed, and finally he managed to get a second chance with Iron Man, but that's what killed Robert Downey Jr.'s career for a while in the like mid 90s. Mm-hmm. You know, he'd show up like shit faced or whatever, and like you can't do that. You know, you gotta show up with your A game. There's a lot of
Yeah, I mean, same thing happened with Lohan's career. She was impossible to work with, showing up drunk to set. Another thing that's killing it, which since I'll finish this, let you guys go on. Another thing, so like you're saying, Hollywood's dying. Another thing, there was actually an article in Variety recently. It's just the system is so outdated with the unions and everything. Like, there's a classic example from Christopher Nolan. I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan. I want to see Dunkirk. But his first Hollywood movie, his first big budget movie was Memento. And there's a story on Memento where, because Nolan only did his little independent film following before that. So he's on set and he was helping another guy. He had nothing to do. So he was moving some sandbags with the crew, and some guy came up to him, "You can't do that. You can't do that." It's like, why not? That's the union's job. Like, you cannot do anything on set that's not in your union contract in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it's such a waste of fucking money. I mean, like you say, Hollywood's going to die, and the indies, you know, if they can get the funding. I mean, the Cynic were talking about this last night. If we can get if crowdfunding, people can get crowdfunding and make little movies, and then take the budgets to do other stuff, it would just kill Hollywood because they're so outdated. The budgets are overblown. I'm like, okay, there's a lot. I'm not going to grandstand. I love Hollywood stars as much as the next guy watching their movies, but do they really need $20 million up front for a movie and then they're 20% of the proceeds from the fucking movie? This is just fucking absurd.
And I think that's why you're seeing less of a reliance on. That's why the Marvel movies are more in the business of making stars than merging pre-existing stars into their property.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, most of the guys, most of those guys, while they command big money now, they didn't necessarily when they first started on these movies. I mean, you know, Chris Pratt, when he signed on for Guardians of the Galaxy, was a fat guy that was in a sitcom. You know what I mean? and they just said, you know what, we'll take this charming guy here and we'll send him to the gym for a few months and it'll work out great.
Yeah, and then you had then you had Batista, who was a pro wrestler before that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, the one bit of middle market that the entertainment industry has is there's this company called 1E Entertainment or E1 or something like that. They produced movies like that Iron Sky with the moon Nazis.
I have not seen this.
You should see Iron Sky. Let me put it this way: if you hear the words moon Nazis and your first thought is go on, you'll like this movie.
That was my first thought, actually.
Yeah, you'll like this movie. Then. The story of it is a bunch of Nazi scientists had, before World War II ended, escaped to the moon and set up a like moon base up there where they've been living since. And they've like raised families and shit up there, and then they come invading back down to Earth in like these spaceships that look like World War II style dirigibles. It's just fantastic. There was also, what was it, a Christmas Horror Story I think I talked about on here back during Christmas. They produce that. Now the effects can be rough, but they're not bad. They're just a little rough around the edges, and the movies are far more clever than a lot of what goes on at Hollywood.
Right.
And I mean, I've rarely been disappointed with them I mean, they're almost all direct to DVD and stuff like that, but I'm very rarely disappointed when I pick up these films. You know, you see them at like Target or something like that, and they're worth getting. I think I even ordered a couple out of the little catalog that came with the one.
I got to see this moon Nazi thing.
Iron Sky, it's called.
Iron Sky. Okay.
This is why I wish we had Luke here to show the visuals, because Iron Sky is just fucking hilarious. Like, it starts off with they send a black astronaut to the moon, and it was some sort of like publicity stunt NASA was doing, and the moon Nazis capture him, and they do some sort of like experiment with him, and they turn him white.
Oh God.
And then he comes back, they send him back down, and no one recognizes him, so he ends up a homeless guy just holding a sign that says moon Nazis are coming. Oh, and the president in that movie is basically Sarah Palin. Like, that's not her name, but that's what the president just is in that movie for some reason.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, it's great. It's fun. You know, remember when movies were fun?
I think it was a long time ago. I don't think I know that since the first Resident Evil.
You know, it's
fun can only exist if there's a middle class to prop it up, though, and that's what it all comes back to. As long as the middle class is shrinking, you're going to have less experimentation happening from the people who could actually make it work, who could actually put money behind it and give it a chance to succeed.
You're absolutely right. One thing to go back, let's go back to the 19th century. Now, the movies of the 19th century were novels. Novels really became a 19th century thing. And who were most of the authors were middle class, and most of the consumers were they were actually looked down upon as a middle class, and especially a woman's art form. You're right. You don't have this middle class to buy the products. Nobody's going to reproduce it. You're absolutely right.
Who the hell's doing that? Oh, Cynic and Chief is doing it. Yeah, here we go. That's the cover to Iron Sky, like the DVD box. Like, let me put it this way: if you look at that and you're like, "That seems cool," then you like that movie.
That came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I was like, "Who managed to do that?" Did Luke pop up?
That looks fucking awesome. Now I gotta see this movies.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Well,
It's a lot of fun.
Well, going back to the Shia LaBeouf thing, because I heard you mentioned Amanda Bynes. There's a commonality between these two people because they have very similar beginnings. They were both on TV since they were kids. Shia LaBeouf with Even Stevens and Amanda Bynes with All That, I believe.
Yes.
And so they're still pretty young people, relatively speaking. And you think that this is my theory. They have these meltdowns because bad stuff has happened to them.
Yes.
A guy, Corey Feldman talked about. They're very powerful people in very high places who molest these children that come through their doors.
Well, I mean, you look at the Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, and you will, I mean, you watch those shows, and you will see some of the most beautiful jailbait girls you've ever fucking seen in your life. And after a while, you realize
Bellathorn. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, after a while, you realize there's probably a casting couch situation going on here.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Like the big Nickelodeon producer, Dan Snyder. I don't know if you're familiar with the conspiracy theory about him, but yeah, I don't want to say anything more about it because I don't want to get killed or anything. But yeah, just
you'll commit suicide by shooting yourself in the back of the head.
Yeah, I don't want to turn up dead or anything, but yeah, just some really disturbing stuff about him and the kids on his show.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I mean, Hollywood used to, while it was never the nicest place in the world, there used to be at least some protection for child actors. There used to be some, I don't know, there were adults in the room who would make sure that these kids were somewhat taken care of, that they were getting their schooling, that they were, you know, somebody was showing
not getting raped,
put some money away, that kind of thing.
Well, we have to
I just don't believe any of that's there anymore.
No, we have to give, actually, it's up to the parents. We have to give, Elijah Wood has spoken about this when obviously he was a child star in the early 90s and onwards, and his parents actually would not allow him to go to Hollywood parties or premieres because of that.
Oh, that's wise.
They would not let him. They kept him at home, had him go to school, and he's actually spoken about being very thankful to his parents for doing that. And there's stories of Hollywood parents. I mean, you want to talk about the worst parents. We talk about the studios and the weirdos that run Hollywood, but the parents are just as bad. You hear stories of Hollywood, like they're vicariously seeking fame through their children, and they will do it by any means. Yeah,
that's the biggest problem. I mean, look, it's a wonderful opportunity if your kid ends up an actor or some sort of entertainer. I mean, you know, if you're smart about it, you could set that kid for life. But you know, you have to. I mean, first of all, the mere act of giving a teenager insane large sums of money is dangerous in and of itself. You know what I mean?
Macaulay Culkin, anyone?
Yeah, you know. But yeah, you and don't let them around these producers. I mean, there's some horrifying shit going on in corners of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Always remember what F. Scott Fitzgerald said when he was a screenwriter at the end of his life, when he was a failed novelist. In his mind, he said, "Hollywood is a Jewish dream and a Goyish nightmare." A Gentile nightmare. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's why I feel bad for guys like Shia LaBeouf. That's why I don't really make fun of him, because how they are and how they're acting out is most likely a function of just these very bad feelings that it came as a product of some potential abuse. That's why they're acting out in such a way.
Absolutely.
Horrible stuff has happened to them. And I think that's something that more people need to explore, because like I said, Corey Feldman was talking about this in an interview. It was, I forget where I saw it, but yeah, it is just, and like you said, like these parents are turning a blind eye because they want the money.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, just look at what happened with that Daddy 05 situation. I mean, it was the exact same kind of, you know, not giving a damn about your kids on a much smaller scale. You know, I mean, at least the Hollywood parents are selling their souls for fortunes. You know, Daddy 05 sold his for scraps.
Yeah,
for AdSense money.
Yeah.
Oh God.
But yeah, it's
Oh,
just
man.
it's a shame. It's a damn shame.
Yeah.
All right. Did we cover the CNN doxing story yet? Because I did, I did want to cover that a little bit. I talked about it. So let me put it this way: everybody fucking talked about it like Monday and shit. I mean, I never seen a story get that. Like, I mean, everybody from like little alt media guys on YouTube to Rush Limbaugh were like, "Holy shit! Did you see what CNN did?" And I can't imagine how CNN thought that was going to work out well for them.
And since we were just talking about him, CNN should have talked to Shia LaBeouf before they went to war with Paul. That was a bad idea.
Yeah, so in case you didn't know, and I can't imagine you didn't know, what ended up happening was Trump had found some GIF of him body slamming Vince McMahon, and somebody put the CNN logo, and he tweeted it out because he thought it was funny, because it was, and then the media immediately got butthurt. That's a threat, But yeah, they thought, oh, that's a threat. So somehow CNN found what they thought was the guy who created it on Reddit. Now it turns out it might not even have been. And they forced an apology at him, or they were going to expose his identity. I mean, the article is pretty. They basically admit that they blackmailed him. I mean, as close as you can come to just saying we blackmailed this guy. I mean, they said, like, we're not going to publish his identity because he apologized, but we reserve the right to publish his identity if that changes. And
fuck off.
Like, I can't begin to imagine how they thought that was a good idea. You talk about arrogance. You talk about living in a bubble where you thought everyone was just going to think that was cool. I mean, there's a lot of liberals that aren't even defending him on that. That's astounding. And I mean, all these fucking autists out there, they've gone to war about it. I mean, some of it was just easy shit. Like, a bunch of people downloaded the CNN app on their iPhone and gave it 1 star and then uninstalled it, to the point where that is the CNN app rating right now on the iPhone store. It's a 1-star rating. And there's tons of like reviews where it's like, this app gave me cancer and shit like that. And like, just joke fucking reviews like that. I can't imagine how they thought that was going to pan out well for them. That, like, I mean, and some of these autists, like I said, talking about Shia LaBeouf, these are guys who found a flag by looking at the fucking sky. You know what I mean? Just looking at cloud and stars and shit like that, and the occasional plane going by. They knew which field in Tennessee this flag was at.
They underestimated the power of weaponized autism.
I mean, CNN's going to be lucky if they don't wake up tomorrow to find that their site's been hacked and replaced with like midget tranny porn or something. Replaced by the stuff Common Filth talks about in his videos.
Oh my god.
I think that the American opposition, like let's go back to the Obama years, like 2009 when he took office. I remember just the amount of desperation the conservative wing of American politics was undergoing, because I remember they had some 13-year-old kids speak at a conservative conference. They're like, "Oh my gosh, this is the future. Look, the future's bright. This is the future of conservatism," and now the kid is like a hardcore leftist. So it's just this. I'm seeing it's an analog from 8 years ago. The conservatives back then were very desperate because they don't like Obama, whatever. Now you're seeing the same thing with people who don't like Trump.
Oh,
eventually they're going to figure it out. They're going to stop being so stupid in history. They're going to. I think they're gonna grow up a little bit in the next 4 to 8 years.
I think CNN might find. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know there's big companies behind it, but CNN is gonna be lucky if it's not shutting its doors by the end of 4 years. Somehow they're making MSNBC look like the adults in the room. All right.
Well, I even heard rumblings that CNN was going to start moving away from news and start producing Vice kind of documentaries instead, and shifting the focus to that. Well, you know how Vice they make a lot of documentaries. They even have their own TV channel now. If you watch their channel, it's not so much news as it is editorials and documentary artistic format. So that's something they could do.
Well, there was a time early on in the Obama administration where CNN was trying to move towards the middle. I mean, trying as much as they were even capable of such a thing, but they put on some token conservatives, and they were trying to be more the hard news network and all. And I mean, even at the beginning of the Obama administration, I don't even think that would have worked. Things were already so polarized. No one wanted to see that.
If you were of the opinion that Obama's the son of Satan, you're watching Fox News. You're not going to watch CNN. You're going to want to watch something that's going to soothe your, I don't know, hurt feelings, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, but the problem,
they're in no man's land.
The problem is not even people that hate Trump are watching CNN, because fucking reruns of Full House on Nick at Night get higher ratings on a night than CNN.
Well, I have to imagine that like CNN's almost become an embarrassment even to that side. I mean, like I said, you're making MSNBC seem like real fucking journalists. CNN truly is fake news. I mean, you're not only lying, you're not even good at it.
Well, look at what happened with the Rachel Maddow thing when she's like, "Oh, I got Trump's tax returns, whatever." It turned out to be nothing, but her ratings popped because of that.
Right.
And I don't know what the difference
CNN
between that and this is.
Well,
I mean, the fact that they're blackmailing people, yeah, that's pretty bad, but it seems like a similar stunt to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, James O'Keefe actually showed that. James O'Keefe and his great under camera work, great guy, by the way. I've met him. He actually I think he got Van Jones to admit Russia's a big nothing burger. They do it for ratings, for the liberals to tune in.
Yeah.
So it is all fake news for ratings. Go read your weekly world news.
Well, the key with any of these kind of things, and Vox Day sums it up well, and he says, don't talk to them. If you hate the far leftist media, then don't talk to them, because nothing drives them nuts worse than being ignored. I mean, when Trump was the president-elect still, the media had a shit fit because he didn't invite them to dinner. I mean, they're like a scorned teenage girl, And so, yeah, if you don't like the liberal media, then your best bet is to just, don't give them the time of day, because, boy, they hate that. In fact, I mean, if you really want it to mess with, like, CNN anchors, the next stunt should be, like, everybody on Twitter just mass blocks them. I mean, that would probably freak one of them out into histrionics way more than just shit trolled them.
Well, we also have to, another way is to take the Sam Hyde route and do an interview and be like, the real question we got to ask is when are people going to start mass murdering journalists? You can print that. So just troll the fuck out of them.
Good old Sam Hyde. I don't remember which one, but there was one of these leftist fucking e-rags, like, I don't know, not Huffington Post, but maybe it was Jezebel or something. But they actually posted an article after one of these shootings when they're like, if you hear reports that the shooter is Sam Hyde, be very skeptical. Like, I also love that they didn't even say don't believe it. They're like, because, maybe he did it this time. but be very skeptical. At this point, Sam Hyde could shoot somebody and get away with it. Any lawyer worth his salt is going to be able to do reasonable doubt on that.
Oh, yeah.
I saw somebody do one, but with the Richard Spencer gif of him getting punched.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty good.
Well, see, you were just mentioning common felt the conservatives when Obama got elected. Well, this is the problem between the older conservatives, the baby boomer, William F. Buckley started conservatives, which represented that. And this newer right, whatever you want to call it, the alt-right, the new right, whatever term you want to say. I just use alt-right because I've been around so long. But the old right was, the pearl clutches, like Bechtloff calls them, like, oh my God, like, can you believe what Obama's doing? Bro, the Rush Limbaugh, we have to do this. We just don't give a fuck anymore. The new right with us now just trolls the fuck out of him, doesn't care. We don't take them seriously. That we delegitimize them. The old right used to trying to argue and have a fight with them. We're just like, fuck you, go suck a dick.
The best thing the right has going for it right now is a sense of humor, which is something it hasn't had in a while.
Well, I see it. I see the foundation being laid for the opposite to happen, whereas you're going to have the left wingers adopting a similar mindset, but preying on the new right sensitivities about race. Now, like that review I uploaded of the Def Jam video game. On the new channel that I made. Yeah, I got a bunch of people making ass-mad comments about black people aren't really that good. They're just the mere mention of black people, they cannot help but type how much they hate black people and how inferior they think they are.
Well, one thing
go ahead.
I'll grant you this. The one thing I cannot stand about sections of the alt-right is that they have made, I don't know how else to put this. They've made an idol out of their race. Look, race matters. It does matter. It's not all that matters. I mean, Richard Spencer, I still am baffled that Richard Spencer is considered right-wing. The motherfucker has come out and said he doesn't care. You know, he's left-wing on social issues like homosexuality. He has all these socialist leanings like basic income and shit like that. Yeah. You know, we used to just call those leftists. You know, and there does come. But
if you hate black people, if you don't want them in your bathhouse, if you don't want them in your all-white bathhouse, then you're a fascist. Or
yeah, there does come this point where it becomes the meme becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of just racist leftists, and I don't think that the whole of the alt-right is like that. But there are a lot of guys, sadly, at the top that, and a lot of shit posters that's all it is with them. You know, it's nothing but that. Go. Wait, I think we lost you for a second there, Grime. Go ahead.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I will definitely grant you that there are some leftists, you know, racist leftists and that kind of thing. But at the same time, I Christian.
You're
I don't
coming
make
in and out there, man.
God out of my. Can you hear me?
There you are. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I don't make
I think
a
it's
God
just if
out
you're
of
too loud, you coming in and out.
Okay, sorry. I don't make a God out of it, but we have to understand at the same time, this is where the left has drawn the battle lines. They don't talk about Christian guilt. They don't talk about American privilege. They talk about white guilt, white privilege. And this is why the old right has lost. For 50 years, since the 60s, the left has been fighting us on the grounds of race. And because the right refused to battle that line for so long, they've lost so much territory, both physically in terms of cities and parts of their countries, like it's happening now in Europe and most of our Southwest, but also on the battlefront of ideas. So the alt-right the right today has been pushed in the corner to an extent where race is the battlefield, and that's where we have to fight. Because for 50 years, the right has been trying to fight by land, while the left has been attacking by sea, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I'll grant you that. I understand where this new focus on race has come from, and frankly, I'm more focused on race than I was even a few years ago. But as I said, there's something to be guarded against. You know, I don't like the strain of, you know, white people are fucking magic that I see. You know, white people aren't going to make socialism work.
Yeah, I agree.
People aren't going to make fucking retarded. Yeah, white people aren't going to make fucking bathhouses, you know, on every street corner fucking sustainable. It's not going to happen. All right.
The Greg Johnson right. Yeah.
Yeah, the Greg Johnson right isn't going to go anywhere. All right. It's just not.
I will grant you that. Yeah. I will.
As I said, it matters, but just don't lose sight of the fact that it's not all that matters. Don't let them push you into a place where it's all that matters. You know, and I know that you're going to get called evil and racist and all this bullshit no matter what. You know, the left will call you a white supremacist if you merely would rather white people not go extinct. They'll call you a white supremacist for that.
Well, go ahead.
At the same time, like, some of these guys, and Comet Phil's right, they're far too fucking sensitive about it. You want to win an issue, be whimsical, be funny, be smart, be a smartass about it. Don't get fucking butthurt about it. Don't get, and I see this all the time. I see, you know, good Lord, the TRS fanboys that pop up in my fucking comments once in a while, you know, oh, you know, the amount of people that are still going after, you know, Matt Forney because he fucked an Asian chick one time or something. Meanwhile, they're cool with Greg Johnson. You know, I mean,
hey, Richard Spencer had an.
It's cool because he only sucks white dick. That
yeah,
Richard Spencer had an Asian girlfriend at one time. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that? Oh, I'm sorry.
You know, the amount of people that their main beef with Milo seems to be the shade of dick he sucks. You know, that
yeah, see,
we
have
can't
an
let
example.
that become what we are. We can't.
There's actually an example of this we can use, Bechtloff, where you're saying where you make race is very important. It's a root of any nation in a sense. It's one of the roots. I will not disagree. I say that in a book I'm working on. But we have to look at there's other factors too. Like you said, the perfect example of this is Israel. Now, I'm going to make a prediction. Israel will not survive the end of the century because they made Jewishness, racial Jewishness, the core of it. There is a low, I've talked to people, there is actually like a low-level civil war because the fucking socialist, I'll say, use the word socialist, non-working Hasids, we call Hasids here in New York, the Orthodox, are overpopulating the actual working democratic Jews, and there's no way Israel can survive, and there's a low-level culture war, economic war, all of that going on right now in Israel.
Wow, what a shock. The R-types among you are breeding the fastest. Like, holy shit. How did that happen? You know,
exactly.
We were only giving out all this welfare. You know, I mean, what did you think? Like, I think it was Greg Johnson that had an article. Maybe I got the wrong guy because whatever. I'm a casual fan. I can't keep up with all the continuity here. But I think it was Greg Johnson that said, my ideal country is a place where people are still fighting about abortion and feminism, but it's only white people doing it.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm like, how does that sound good? That's what I have now.
Yeah, and you said it's like, how does that help a blind person?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, what's good about that? I'm not seeing the appeal there.
But hey, Bechtloff, if we use Israel as the example, that means in a couple of generations, the white Christians in there will outbreed all the TRS type socialists, secular people.
Well, you know what? You know why he wants that is because he's afraid that a brown person's going to kill him for hate crime motivations. That's what it is. He knows that white people will leave him alone. They'll like twist their foot into the ground and look uncomfortable because they know they should do something about the abominations that he commits, but they won't. And he knows that. He knows that whites are the most morally apathetic people. Well, whereas if you try that shit walking down Crenshaw, they'll kill you.
Well, Common Filth and I were just talking about how I've grown more, I guess, right wing on the gay question. And for me, I mean, look, my primary political motivation in the core of my nature is always get off my lawn. That's just my nature. It's just the kind of guy I am. It's just how I'm wired. So the culture at large over the last, I want to say 15 years, let's say probably right up until gay marriage got passed when that illusion was completely shattered. They portrayed gay people as just a bunch of people who want to be left alone. And even if I don't like them, even if I don't like what they're doing, even if I think that what they're doing is morally wrong, there's always a part of me that can respect that. The problem is that was horse shit. And it wasn't true. And I honestly think if we could maybe hammer that point home to more people, that maybe a few more might move over because, like, no, they don't want to just be left alone. They're gonna make you bake a dildo cake for them and throw them a parade, or they're gonna throw you in jail.
You remember that article if you remember that article that was written in, I think it was 2012 on one of their websites, it says, I think the title of the article is this: Can we finally admit that we do actually want to indoctrinate children?
Oh, gee, exactly.
That was several years before gay marriage was legalized in America, before that whole, you have to respect their pronouns or you're going to jail thing in Canada. And nobody gave a shit. and nobody ever will.
And that's the other thing, the trannies drive me even more nuts, because that's a case where I'm sorry, no, there are 4 lights. You're not going to make me say otherwise, okay? You can put a dress on, but you're still a dude. No, you didn't have a sex change, because that doesn't, no such thing exists. They don't even have that technology in Star Trek, okay?
No.
What they did was they mutilated your genitals until it kind of sort of resembles the opposite sex.
Here's the problem, Bechtloff. Your IQ isn't high enough to understand that penises can transcend masculinity into femininity. Your IQ is just not high enough. You are an untermensch.
In all fairness, if you've ever seen Amazing Atheist naked, you might believe in a feminine penis.
Oh! By the way, I still hate you for that video, Bechtloff.
The roast session has begun.
Do the guys that fuck trannies understand you're not fucking a vagina, you're fucking a wound? That's a fucking wound. Somebody cut a hole into the guy's body. You're fucking a wound. You might as well put your dick in somebody's hole after they're shot. Okay.
I actually think it's perhaps less degenerate to fuck a pre-op, because at least you can look at it and know what's going on down there. I mean, granted, that's kind of like saying which pile of shit smells worse, but I mean, like God in heaven forgive me, I've seen pictures of the post-op shit on like articles where I'm like, that doesn't look like a vagina.
Oh!
Look, I just don't think we should be establishing a hierarchy of these things, like what's better than what, because then you're saying like maybe something's remotely acceptable.
Well, no, I think it's more an intellectual exercise that I'm actually trying to establish a hierarchy. I mean, that's sort of like arguing over which layer of hell is less hot.
But this is my problem with the right wing in general, and I see this amongst so many of these people who have all these weird hyphenated ideologies in their Twitter profiles. They don't care. And even like the blue checkmark crowd, the new right crowd, they don't care. They're just like, why are you getting so angry, leftists? They agree with all the premises that the left has defined for them. They just don't like that the left gets worked up about something, that they actually care.
Are you talking about Paul Joseph Watson checking out Prague's vibrant gay scene?
The Mike's. I'm talking about him, the Mike Cernovich crowd, the Milo Yiannopoulos crowd, all of them, which defines the new right. They're the mainstream. They're basically like the new GOP.
Well, it sort of comes back to what I was talking about with Shoe on Head, where it's like you're not. I mean, Dan Olson sat there all mad because Dan Olson actually believes in his bullshit. Whereas no one else at that table believed in a damn thing, and that's the problem.
They want their AdSense and Patreon dollars.
Yeah, it's just pay me Patreon dollary dues and shit like that. Which, speaking of which,
look, I have an opinion.
Yeah. Speaking of which, check out my tip
that matches everybody else's.
But yeah, but no, it's such a fucking Hellraiser box too. That's the thing. It's the one thing that really strikes me about like your older videos, Common Felt, isn't even the perversion itself, but how much the people have lost themselves in it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's the thing that really strikes me about it. Like this has just become. It's not even this fucked up thing they do. That's what they are now. That's all they see themselves as now.
And what I've tried to do was expose the true face of it, but nobody really gives a shit. They see their gay BFF and they're like, oh, they seem nice, and they leave it at that. And that's really the depth of relationship that you have nowadays with people. And it's just on the new right, going back to that. They agree with all this shit. They think it's fine if you define your life by this dysfunction. Just don't make a big deal out of it. It's aggressive apathy. It's aggressively agreeing with the status quo.
That's a good line. I like that, Common Felt. Aggressive apathy. I like that.
You could have it. Yeah, spread it around because I like it too.
Well, the biggest problem with the new right is simply there's a godlessness in it. That's the biggest problem with it. Why are so many of these 1488 guys, I accused them earlier of worshiping their race. Well, of course they do, because, so many of them are like, I'm not going to worship a Jew on a stick, or they're either some atheist or they're LARPing as some sort of pagan. The LARPy bullshit where your religion has about as much to do with the ancient mythology as fucking Marvel Comics store.
Yeah.
I've been going on a rant on my Facebook about the LARPing of all kinds lately. It's been pretty bad.
I'm an Odinist. It's like, you know what? If you call yourself an Odinist, you're really no different than the teenage girl who calls herself a Wiccan. All right.
Right. It's they don't have the context to believe in that stuff anymore. This is a very ancient thing. You don't exist in that time period anymore.
Yeah, it's not like, and maybe there are some exceptions, but it's not like they really researched these beliefs or anything. Like I said, this is that, what they fucking picked up a Thor comic one time and thought it looked cool. All right.
Went on Wikipedia and found out, oh, this is European. I guess I better go with this.
Well, you beat me to it, Bechtloff. I was going to say, if you look at Europe, what are the two nations in Europe that are going to survive, that have been the most based and the most right-wing right now? It's fucking Hungary and Poland, which wed this ethno-nationalism with a strong Christian religious conservative identity. That's the way forward.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you have a godlessness about it, you're not gonna go anywhere. The best you're gonna hope for is Milo Yiannopoulos. All right,
you need standards.
Yeah, I mean, you need y'all to quote a meme, y'all motherfuckers need Jesus.
I mean, do we really have to look at Japan, which doesn't have the racial problem we do, but they're just as degenerate and dying in birth rates?
Yeah, I don't think Japan is headed for a full collapse because thankfully they have kept third worlders out. But they're going to be in for some rough times. They're going to be in for a real culling of the herd, and it's going to be ugly. Now, I think in maybe 100 years, Japan might come out of this much stronger than ever before. Who knows? They at least have a shot at surviving because they haven't allowed themselves to be replaced. But they're going to be in for some rough times.
Well, their population is rapidly aging, and
yeah, they're having
no one has any interest in having children because the men are basically slaves to these corporations where it's like you're expected. You're falling asleep on the job. Oh, that's good. That means you're working really hard for us.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Look, populations can expand indefinitely, especially when you live on an island nation. Resources have their limits. Populations are naturally going to have their ups and downs. The problem is when you have a very sudden downward shift, you end up with a population that ages too much, and it causes real problems. This isn't a natural occurring kind of up and down, that things, that's understandable. I mean, there are some of my fellow Christians have this insane idea that populations can just expand indefinitely. I don't know where they got that. I really don't. Be fruitful and multiply. Yeah, God said that when there were 2 people. Okay, not like 7 billion. All right, but populations will go up and down. So, in and of itself, declining birth rates aren't necessarily a problem, except when you have really steeply declining birth rates. Then again, you end up with just this aged population, and that's now again, if they resist the urge to invite a bunch of third worlders in to fill the void, they might survive, but it's going to be ugly.
Well, and again, they have this culture where it's like you're expected to devote all this loyalty to the corporation. And so they barely even see you as human. And yeah, there is sustainable growth, but there has to be a desire to contribute to that growth. And it just seems to be just beat out of the Japanese male. And the females, I think I read something like 1 in 200 Japanese women, 0.5% have done some form of pornography. It's insane.
Well, I'm sure they're just so desperate to scratch an itch because there's no actual fucking men around.
Yeah, that's a problem as well.
I'm sure that's driving them insane.
Oh, you have the herbivore. That's the herbivore phenomenon.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Yeah. Eventually they just go batshit insane like a cat in heat. Just rubbing their pussy across the carpet.
as a rebuttal to that, Japanese people have been pretty fucking weird for a long time. I don't know if you're familiar with the painting, the fisherman's wife.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And that was painted long before any of these problems started happening. So there's something to be said for that.
Well, yeah, I'm not gonna argue with that. And
Oh.
as Kirk Eichenwald once discovered, they have tentacle porn too. So there's that.
and it's traditional Japanese art.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, there's a reason they were the first nation to throw that into a porn. Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting. The only nation, if you look out through history, the only people that has seemed to survive being basically atheist are the Chinese. I mean, throughout their history, they've basically been Confucianism. You know, it says something's up there, but it's not a god or something like that. The Chinese seem to be the only people that can be basically atheists and survive.
Yeah, but in all fairness, the Chinese are all kinds of fucked up.
That's true.
I mean, there's times they make the Japanese seem sane.
Yeah, it's like you can sustain that if you have a highly authoritarian society where people
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Don't think about anything. Don't think about your place in the universe. Don't think about what your life means. Just shut up, keep your head down, and do this thing that we tell you to. But that's not sustainable either.
Yeah, and even if it is, there's a question of, I mean, I guess the Borg is sustainable. Do you want to live like that? I mean,
right, yeah.
I mean, there's a reason, and again, I'm a Christian, so I'm biased, but there's a reason that, Christianity is the religion that produced, free nations, at least relatively free nations, because a Christian people can sustain that freedom. There's a reason our freedom went into the shitter when we suddenly decided we weren't Christian anymore. It sort of goes hand in hand with it.
Well, John Adams even said that the Constitution was only written for a moral and faithful people. I mean, it's meaningless without that. Sorry.
Well, I mean, part of the reason it's meaningless without that is because nobody follows it. It's not a magic document that enforces itself. It's a gentleman's agreement.
Shh! Don't tell the conservatives that.
It means nothing if no one follows it.
Yeah, that's why it's like, if nobody really cares to enforce the law, guess what? It's not, even if it's technically illegal, it's not getting enforced.
Yeah, when your answer to certain problems like that is, we just put in more reforms. Like, I had somebody arguing with me that the Catholic Church fixed the pedophile crisis because they put in more reforms 10 years ago, and I'm thinking like, well, wait a second. Was it not already against the rules to butt fuck little boys?
Well, and
I mean, how many more rules do you need on top of that? What you need is better people in charge.
Right, and then you have that story of like the big gay orgy that just got broken up at the Vatican. So
the problem is the caliber of men in charge.
Exactly.
It's the Vatican. It's not Hogwarts. All right, the rules don't magically enforce themselves. Right.
Well, it's just, you have to have decent people who do the right thing, because that's the right thing to do. You live by these rules because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
it means something in and of itself.
There was a reform. What reform did you put in? Unless the reform was getting rid of the people that were there and putting better people there, then no reform's going to fix it. It's not like you're going to put extra rules that are going to keep that shit from happening. If you need a rule to tell you not to butt fuck little boys or not to cover up for the guy that's butt fucking little boys, what you need is y'all motherfuckers need Jesus. All right.
Right. Because it's like, it's not just like this is some sudden thing that happened where it's like, oh my gosh, we didn't know. No, there are people along the line who ignored some very obvious warning signs. So there's just a whole chain of enabling leading up to that point. And there wasn't a man decent enough to say, I'm putting my foot down, you're out of here.
Well, I mean, people, what was it? It was around 2000, I think, when all those things really started to break in the news and everyone acted shocked. And I'm like, well, wait a second. This has been a joke since well before I was born. Okay. And I could give an example right off the top of my head. You go watch the movie Airplane, which is a great movie if you've never seen it. Funny as hell. There's a scene there's a scene where a guy is like reading like a dirty magazine, like a Playboy or something. He pulls out the centerfold, right? And then you pan over to a priest and he's reading Boy's Life and he pulls out the centerfold in Boy's Life. Okay. So like, and what was that movie? Like the mid 70s?
Yeah.
All right. So don't tell me no one knew about this shit up until then. Like it was a big surprise.
Yeah. And that's why these seminaries like Notre Dame got the nickname Notre Flame because of how debauched it was. and yeah, I'm not making this up. I think it's on a website called Killing the Buddha. I read it on my show one time. But yeah, it's like you have these clueless parents whose kids, they got molested, so now they're reliving that. So like, oh, we don't know what to do with our queer kids. Let's send them off to the seminary. That'll help. and so it goes. And then you have people just like them enabling each other, and that's how you get all these kids getting raped.
Well, I think.
How long for the day?
I mean, I'm not a Catholic, so I'm obviously on the outside looking in. But I think a reform that could help would be if you allowed priests to marry and actually be family men. Because when you have a situation where somebody is not allowed to marry, and particularly if they are, for example, set to go live with a bunch of other dudes, there's a certain type of guy that might be attracted to that position. Just spitballing it out there. If you're a gay man and somebody says, hey, there's this job where you'll never marry and no one will question it, and you go get to live with a whole bunch of other dudes, that might have a certain appeal to you.
and wait, let's not forget the most alluring feature to them, a steady stream of young underage altar boys.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the marriage thing, but to that, I would add they would have to be married for a certain period of time and you have to have them require some fruit being produced from that.
Oh, well, ultimately, what you need is a cultural change there. What you need is, I mean, why did this happen? Why did everyone look the other way? That's the real problem. Why did everyone look the other way? What made everyone look the other way? Take a good look at that. That's the only thing I can tell you. Because, look, things like that are going to happen. Okay, that's the sad reality of life. Pedophilia is going to pop up once in a while. Anytime there are adults that have charge over children, once in a while a pedophile is going to worm his way in there. It's sad, it sucks, but it happens. Predators go where the prey is. The real problem is when you have systemic covering it up. That's the unforgivable shit. That's where I want to burn an institution to the ground. That's why if it were up to me, I'd lodge a fucking missile at Penn State football. All right?
Yeah.
Because that is the sin right there. When you covered it up to save face.
Yeah. I'm going to completely agree with you, Bechtloff. I'm a Catholic. I'll let you go next, Common Phil. But one thing, the Catholic Church can reform this. Like, I'm with Common Phil and you, Bechtloff, as a Catholic on the marriage thing. I mean, we got to remember, the Catholic Church has reformed in the past. I mean, they call something the 11th century. It's either 12th or the 11th century Renaissance. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But in the 10 or the 1100s, I think it was the 1100s, most of what we consider modern Catholicism really formed then, like the idea of confession one-on-one really conformed them. I mean, the idea of non-married priests happened around that time, a couple of centuries before. I mean, so we form this and have that do that.
And just on a personal level, when I'm at a church and I have a pastor, I feel better about that pastor when I know that he's a husband and a father. I feel there's a certain additional level of maturity at play there. And I say that as someone who is neither a husband or father. But, I expect better from my pastor than from me. He's supposed to, be my shepherd in this little flock.
Yeah, because ostensibly they have to give out family and marriage advice.
Yeah, at some point I hope to be married. And, I would like a pastor that can give me advice as a successful husband. So I had an English teacher in high school, and he was a secular old Jew, but he was a funny guy. He was one of the let me put it this way, he's one of the few teachers I remember fondly, or even remember, I should say. But he had married some Catholic girl, and I remember him telling me the story one time of how he used to just bust the priest balls when they had to do the marriage counseling, and every time the priest would say do this or do that and all, he would just go like, and did this work with your wife? You know, and I mean,
Ow.
kind of had a bit of a point there. You got to give credit. But yeah, that I think would be a really good reform for him. And yeah, you know, I'm on the outside looking in. I mean, I guess to some extent, hey, do what you all want. That's your house. But you know, you gotta.
You're absolutely right that the fundamental thing is that would prevent all of this is people saying something, because you have to understand that this is probably not just one person that finds out about this and they just keep it to themselves. There are several people that see these warning signs and they all ignore them.
And don't get me wrong, I realize that false accusations happen. I'm not saying the moment that there's a hint of something, you string somebody up. I'm saying you take it seriously and you worry about finding the truth and not, oh, is this going to embarrass the organization? No, you worry about, did this happen? If it happened, we're going to solve it. And if it didn't, well, maybe we need to not let that false accuser in. But the point is, you get to the truth and you figure out what needs done. You don't worry about, oh, this might embarrass this organization. Well, tough shit. You know, trust me, your organization is going to be a lot more embarrassed when you cover it under the rug and it eventually finds its place out in the open.
Yeah.
Yep. You just got to do your due diligence.
You know. Well, I think we've rambled on for a while. Anybody got any closing thoughts?
Bring back the Borgia and Medici popes that had open female mistresses in the Vatican.
No, it's a step up. All right. Well, Craig, thanks for hopping in. It is nice having you on the show again. You haven't been on here in a while.
Thank you. Let me please. Let me back anytime if you want me to. I hope I did a good job.
Yeah, you're always welcome on here. Common Filth, thanks for being on. You know, you're always welcome on here.
Hey, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it was nice talking to you, Common Filth. I think this is the first time we've talked. It's nice talking to you.
This was a good time.
Yeah. So you know, and I do want to say, I know you started a channel where you reviewed games, and your review of that Def Jam game was, I love that.
I made it. The only reason I did that video was to make the Henry Rollins joke.
Well, and thank you, because fuck Henry Rollins. Man, fuck that guy. Yeah, to hell with that guy. But what didn't that game have a character creation mode in it?
Yeah, that was the like the main mode.
And that's the one. I remember my roommate and I played that game because, like, I think we made Bill O'Reilly because at the time, like, Bill O'Reilly had this huge beef with like Ludacris over something. Like, I don't know, rap music made Bill O'Reilly's.
Oh, I remember it was like it was because Ludacris had misogynist lyrics. I'm not making that up.
Well, no, Ludacris was going to be in a Pepsi commercial, and Bill O'Reilly got all butthurt that was mainstreaming rap or something. So Pepsi ended up not doing the commercial, but Ludacris still got paid.
Stand up.
He still already got the money and shit. So my roommate and I had a running gag where that was just a big old like orchestrated thing between Bill O'Reilly and Ludacris. Like they're just splitting the money in the back or something. But no, I that was a great game. I remember that. I might want to hunt that down actually.
It's expensive, but the Xbox version's like $20 cheaper. So
yeah, I'll probably look for the X. Plus, I have a 360 right now, so it'll be backwards compatible on that.
It's actually not backwards compatible.
It's not. Oh shit!
You gotta have an Xbox One.
Really? Okay. Well, man, I might. Whatever. I'll figure it out.
I never got past PlayStation 2. Honestly. Oops.
Yeah, that was a part of the same console generation.
You know, in many ways, I think that generation was damn near the peak.
It was.
I think we had a lot of downhill stuff from there. Now, maybe things will pick back up. You know, I do like what I'm seeing from the Nintendo Switch, but PS2, that was probably for a superhero nerd like me, it was certainly the peak of superhero games.
Yeah, because you had the middle market you actually still had a middle class, so you had a pretty good middle market. So, and you had the consumer base that actually own these machines. So yeah, there was a lot of good stuff happening back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening. If you enjoy the show, there's a tip jar down below where you could toss me some shekels there. I keep joking if I make a Patreon, I want to set the goal to 6 million just so I can tell people to remember the 6 million. I don't know if Patreon would let me do that or not. But yeah, if you enjoy the show, tips are greatly appreciated. And like, comment, and subscribe, and all that good shit people tell you. So thanks for listening, everybody. That's all we got for tonight. Bechtloff out.